Hi, everybody. Welcome to ASIS TV with your host, Chuck Harold of SecurityGuardRadio.com. Our next guest, Mr. Christopher Friends. We're going to talk about his lecture at GSX this September, A Zero Trust Approach to Information Security. Chris, I love that name. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us what the Zero Trust Approach to Information Security means, what your lectures mean. It's your show, so go.
Okay, Zero Trust is basically restricting network communications so that the only communications that can happen on your network are communications that are explicitly allowed to happen. Basically, you, in a sense, put a firewall in front of every device you have on your network and only allow that device to perform necessary communications. If the communication is not necessary, it's going to be blocked by default. Now, and there's a lot of history. There's a lot of history for doing this. It's kind of the way security always should be done, but it can be very difficult to do, which is one of the reasons not enough organizations currently do it. And one of the things we're going to talk about in my talk at GSX is the approach we took to actually achieving Zero Trust.
Well, I was just going to say, it is the way things should be done. And so to your point, to me, difficult doesn't matter. I mean, I get that point. But why is it that people, beyond being difficult, I mean, is that the main reason people don't do it? Because it is the right way to do it.
It can be difficult when you have thousands of devices in your organization. It is a challenge to do. It takes a lot of planning to do properly. A little background of how I got into Zero Trust is I'm very, very big on doing mock incidents, where basically I simulate an attack or something else against the organization and try to use that to find out what really works in terms of security controls, what could be improved upon, and what maybe doesn't work at all. And I kind of use that approach over and over again to keep improving the security of the organization. And one of the ways I got into Zero Trust is a few years back, we did a mock malware outbreak where I took, it's called the ICAR test string. It's a harmless text file, but all antivirus makers kind of got together years ago and agreed to recognize this file as a virus, even though it's harmless. So it provides a great way to test antivirus software and some other security solutions. And I wrote a script that basically tried to spread this quote-unquote virus to every PC in the organization to see what controls worked, how much would be impacted the organization, things like that. And one of the most effective controls we found in containing this simulated outbreak was network segmentation, because we had network segmentation at the time, but that turned out to be really, really effective control. We wanted to begin to take that network segmentation to the next level. And that's kind of how we got into doing the Zero Trust. Now, we had mentioned how Zero Trust being difficult, and a lot of the challenges with Zero Trust is, even though it shouldn't be the case, a lot of organizations really have no idea of what actually exists on their network, what the necessary communications are, what the necessary communications aren't. So one of the difficult challenges to overcome with Zero Trust is really just building up a list of all the information assets your organization actually has and all the communications that those assets are supposed to have. And that can be a lot of work to actually track down for an organization that has had stuff in place for years and really doesn't understand how it works or what exactly it does, what systems it communicates with. And that's one of the major challenges to doing Zero Trust is finding all that information.
I love your approach to this. And here's where I come from in lectures I've heard from people like at Black Hat and stuff. Let's talk about open source code. People write code. About 80% of most code you take to write a program is open source. And people throw it in, and then they check the security. Or they build an app, and then they check the security. Explain to us, I mean, your approach is the right way. Explain to us why, when people are developing things, they don't have the security programmer in first. I get the time to market thing, but what is the industry disconnect there between making this secure at first and then building your code?
Security definitely has to be built in. It's very hard to make security on later or to bolt it on later. You really can't do security as an afterthought. If you're developing custom applications, it really has to be built into the design of the application itself. The code itself has to be written in a secure way. And if you're more on the infrastructure side, in a similar manner, your security architecture, the design of your network and everything else has to be built with security in mind. It's going to be very difficult to take a network with a very bad architecture, throw a firewall or two in and make it secure. You really have to design your network with security in mind. And that's one of the critical things to taking the Zero Trust approach to over time, is you really have to figure out how to engineer the network, design it in a way that these policies become practical to actually implement.
Are people in the industry now looking at ways to automate this process, to automatically connect these devices in a proper manner so they work with your design?
So there's definitely been a push in the industry to begin to automate things. I have a heavily virtualized server environment, and one of the products we use is called VMware NSX to do microsegmentation. It basically lets you put a little firewall in front of each virtual machine. So effectively, you could create a network segment for each virtual machine if you wanted to with it, to have that zero trust type model. And there are starting to appear products in the market which will actually learn the traffic coming to and from different virtual machines, so you can begin to create those rules in a more automated manner. So there are definitely products coming to market that will help automate the challenge. So for our virtual networks, yes, we're using VMware NSX to do the microsegmentation. On the physical side, I've largely approached that through the use of a NAC appliance, which basically has policies which will restrict the traffic going over the network to just a certain VLAN that they need to communicate with, or a certain subnet they need to communicate with. And within that subnet, I then use the NSX product to further subdivide the communication coming through that subnet. So I kind of use the two solutions to play together to achieve the zero trust model. And that's one of the things I'll be going through in more depth at JSX.
Now, Christopher, some of my, let's say, quote, physical security buddies, end quote, who don't know that they're part of the IT world yet and still use BlackBerries because they think that's the highest technology, please convince them why they should come to your lecture.
Yeah, I think information security is important no matter what aspect of security you come from. Some of the most critical assets in any organization tend to be the information assets. And physical security definitely plays a big, big role in keeping information security and information systems secure too. One of the big things is if you can gain physical access to a system, there's often all kinds of ways you could compromise a system that don't exist remotely. So definitely keeping information assets physically secure is definitely a major part of that. And I mean, even from the forensics and investigation side, information security is heavily impacting law enforcement investigations and other investigations. So the two fields of physical security and information security are starting to overlap more and more and integrate more and more.
Excellent. Mr. Christopher Friends, a zero trust approach to information security. He's a JSX speaker in September in Las Vegas. Make sure you stop by and see him. Mr. Chris, thanks for coming on ASI's TV and SecurityGuy Radio.com. Great interview. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.